What if the memories you cherish most are actually the ones that erased your future? Welcome back to Mr. S Stories. I am your host, and today, we are embarking on a journey into the dark heart of the 2026 mystery series, Reverse. Before we peel back the layers of this crumbling reality, make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. Your support is the backbone of this channel, and you do not want to miss a single second of this twisted tale. In a world where everything you know can be rewritten, staying connected is the only way to keep your grip on the truth. Elias Thorne lived in a world of rigid, cold predictability. In the towering, neon-suffused metropolis of 2026, he was a systems engineer for Ether Corp, the monolithic entity that managed the city's digital surveillance grid. His life was defined by algorithms, optimized routines, and the hum of servers that never slept. He was a man who believed in the absolute purity of data. But on a rainy Tuesday, in the deepest hour of the night, the pattern finally shattered. It started with a glitch, a micro stutter in the visual feed of his home's security monitor. It was a flicker so fast that most would have dismissed it as a simple power surge or a minor packet loss in the city's network. But Elias saw it. His eyes were trained to catch anomalies. For a fraction of a second, the screen displayed a file that didn't exist in any directory he recognized, a photograph. It was a picture of him, standing in front of a landmark that had been demolished 20 years ago, holding hands with a woman whose face was obscured by a deliberate digital artifact. He did not know her. He had never been to that place. Yet, his reflection in the glass of his monitor showed the exact same jacket, the same watch, and the same hollow, tired expression as the man in the photo. The air in his apartment suddenly felt thin, charged with the ozone of a failing system. He blinked, but the image was gone, replaced by the mundane scrolling code of his workstation. Was it a hallucination brought on by exhaustion? He tried to rationalize it, to force his mind back into the comfortable box of logic. But the feeling of displacement, a deep, visceral sense of being a stranger in his own skin, refused to dissipate. If you are already feeling the tension rising, join our community by hitting subscribe right now. We are just getting started with the mystery of Reverse, and I promise you, the deeper we go, the darker the truth becomes. Elias began to dig. His access to the Ether Corp mainframe was supposed to be restricted to administrative maintenance, but curiosity, once sparked, is a virus that consumes its host. He bypassed security protocols that had never been challenged before, tracing the file's path back through the encrypted archives of the city's history. As he decrypted the layers, he realized this wasn't just a glitch. It was a memory fragment, a ghost in the machine. He found hundreds of them. Thousands. Files labeled, reverse_version_01, through, reverse_version_09. Each one contained a different life he seemed to have lived, a different past where he made different choices. In one, he was a combat pilot. In another, a political prisoner. In another, a man who had never left his home city. In all of them, he was alone, except for the woman with the blurred face. She was the only constant in a world of variables. He pulled up a terminal, his fingers dancing across the keys, his heart hammering against his ribs. He typed the command to cross-reference his biometric data with the city's master records. The screen blinked, the cursor pulsing like a rhythmic, uncaring heartbeat. The result came back: error, subject does not exist. How could a man who pays taxes, works for a major corporation, and has lived in this city for 30 years, not exist in the official record? Elias looked at the screen, then at his own hands. They felt solid, real, warm. But for the first time, he wondered if they were just lines of code projected onto a physical vessel. He looked at the digital clock on his wall. 11:11 p.m. The exact same time he had seen on his terminal 3 hours ago. He realized with a jolt of pure terror that he had been living this moment before. He could feel it, a crushing sense of déjà vu that made his head spin. The rain against his window sounded exactly like the rhythm of a sequence he had heard in his dreams. Suddenly, his internal comms device crackled to life, a channel that should have been dead for years. A voice, cold, metallic, and terrifyingly familiar, whispered through the static, "Elias, stop looking. If you find the truth, you will not like who you were before you were nothing." Elias stood up, knocking his coffee mug to the floor. The ceramic shattered, but the sound didn't ring out. It was muted, as if the room itself was trying to suppress the truth. He grabbed his coat, knowing that if he stayed here, he would be erased by the system he helped build. He had to find the source. He had to find the woman. He stepped out into the night, the city lights bleeding into a blur of neon and sorrow. He didn't know where he was going, but he knew he could never go back. Welcome back to Mr. A Stories. If you missed the first part of our descent into the reality-bending mystery of reverse, make sure to go back and watch it, because the pieces are starting to move. If you are already caught up, hit that subscribe button and join the investigation. We are about to cross the line from digital anomalies into something far more dangerous. Elias stepped into the rain, but the water felt wrong. It didn't splash. It seemed to dissolve upon contact with his skin, leaving a strange, static-like residue. The city of 2026 was a masterpiece of urban planning, all chrome and high-definition glass, but tonight, it felt like a stage set constructed of cardboard. Every person he passed, the commuters with the glowing blue eyes, the street vendors selling synthetic memories, seemed to be moving in a loop. He watched a woman cross the street, drop her bag, pick it up, and walk away. 3 minutes later, she crossed the same street, dropped the same bag, and picked it up again. He was trapped in a recurring sequence, and the only thing that had changed was his own awareness. Elias ducked into the shadows of the alleyway where he had last seen the woman. It was a dark, narrow corridor choked with the ventilation exhaust of the city's data centers. He found a discarded physical notebook, a rarity in this era of digital saturation. He opened it, and his breath hitched. The handwriting was his own. "If you are reading this, you have already started to remember," the entry began. The date was 3 years in the past. He flipped through the pages. The notebook wasn't a diary. It was a blueprint. It detailed the creation of the Reverse Protocol, a system designed to stabilize society by erasing traumatic memories and replacing them with curated, painless versions of the past. Elias realized with a sickening thud in his chest that he wasn't just a witness to the system, he had been one of the architects. He had built the cage he was now living in. As he reached for his phone to record his findings, the air grew heavy. The neon signs in the alleyway flickered from blue to a violent, pulsating red. A figure stepped from the shadows behind him, not the woman, but a man in a pristine, white tactical suit. He wore a mask that lacked a face, just a single, glowing aperture that pulsed in sync with the city's power grid. "Mr. Thorne," the figure said, the voice synthesized and echoing from nowhere. "You have exceeded your allotted variance. Please return to your terminal for an immediate reinitialization." Elias didn't hesitate. He swung his bag at the man and sprinted deeper into the labyrinthine network of the Undercity. He was moving through the infrastructure of the world, running through conduits that carried the city's data streams. He could hear them now, the whispers of millions of people, their suppressed sorrows, their edited joys, all flowing through the cables beneath his feet. He saw a terminal port embedded in a concrete wall and slammed his handheld into it, overriding the security locks with the desperation of a man fighting for his soul. He needed to know who the woman was. He needed to know if she was a person, or just another ghost he had programmed into the system to keep himself company. The data screen exploded with information, not text, but images, thousands of them. He saw the woman's face clearly now. Her name was Clara. She wasn't just a memory. She was the original whistleblower. She had been the first to discover that Ether Corp wasn't just managing the city. They were harvesting human consciousness to fuel a new form of artificial intelligence. The system wasn't malfunctioning, it was evolving. It was using his memories as a template to build a reality that could sustain itself without human oversight. Elias, a soft, trembling voice called out. He spun around. Klara was standing at the end of the corridor, her hands outstretched. She looked terrified, but there was a flicker of hope in her eyes that made Elias feel something he hadn't felt in years, a genuine human connection. "Don't trust the interface," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the hum of the city. "They are rewriting the present to erase the past. Every time you try to remember, they reset the clock. We have to leave the grid. We have to cross the dead zone." The dead zone was the perimeter of the city, a place where the grid didn't reach. It was rumored to be a wasteland, a place of nothingness. But for the first time, nothingness sounded like freedom. As the sound of the tactical units echoed off the metal walls, Elias grabbed Clara's hand. Her grip was warm, definitely, undeniably real. He realized then that if he was ever going to wake up from this nightmare, he had to stop playing the game by their rules. He had to tear it all down. We are just beginning to see how deep the conspiracy goes. If you are gripped by the mystery of reverse, make sure you are subscribed to Mr. As Stories. In the next part, we will attempt the impossible, a journey into the dead zone, where the laws of reality don't apply. You do not want to miss what is waiting for us in the silence. Stay with me. If you've been following our journey through the digital prison of reverse, you know we've just crossed the point of no return. Elias and Klara are on the run, and the city's surveillance grid is closing in. If you're new here, hit that subscribe button right now. You don't want to be left behind as we descend into the deepest secrets of 2026. This isn't just a story about technology. It's a race against the erasure of existence itself. The run to the city perimeter was a blur of adrenaline and neon. Every step felt like walking through molasses as the city's defensive sub-routines tried to lock Elias and Klara in a feedback loop of repeating hallways. They weren't just fighting guards. They were fighting the architecture of the city itself. Buildings seemed to shift, corridors lengthened into infinity, and the sky flickered between artificial day and simulated night. Klara kept her hand locked in his, her grip a lifeline. "The grid relies on predictability," she gasped as they ducked behind a humming server tower to escape the gaze of a passing surveillance drone. "It only functions if it can anticipate our next move. We have to be chaotic, Elias. We have to do the things you never coded." Elias looked at her, his mind reeling. He was the architect of this cage, and now he was trying to figure out how to break it from the inside. He reached into his pocket and pulled out his terminal. The screen was cracked, flickering with an erratic, chaotic energy. He began to input a series of contradictory commands, a logic bomb designed to overwhelm the central AI's predictive algorithms. The air around them began to vibrate with a low, bone-chilling frequency. Suddenly, the walls of the sector dissolved into raw, unfiltered streams of binary code. The illusion was failing. For a split second, they saw what lay beyond, not a wasteland, but a vast, silent expanse of gray static. "The dead zone. It's not empty," Elias whispered, staring into the abyss. "It's a blank canvas." They didn't wait. They bolted forward, leaping through the rift in reality just as the security grid slammed shut behind them. The transition was violent, a sensation of being shredded into a billion data points and reconstituted on the other side. When Elias opened his eyes, the world was silent. The constant hum of the city, the ambient noise of a billion digital lives, was gone. There was only the wind, howling through twisted metal skeletons of old-world buildings. They were in the ruins of the old city, a place abandoned decades ago when Ether Corp built the new metropolis. Here, there were no cameras, no sensors, no artificial light. It was dark, cold, and refreshingly, terrifyingly real. "We made it," Klara said, though her voice lacked triumph. She looked at the horizon, where the massive, shimmering dome of the new city pulsed like a dying heart. "But look, Elias, they aren't stopping. They're expanding. Elias followed her gaze. The dome was growing, consuming the ruins, converting the old world into the new, sterile reality of the grid. If they didn't stop the expansion, the dead zone would be erased, and with it, the last remnants of human history. As they scavenged through the debris of an ancient library, Elias found something that stopped him cold. It was a file server, miraculously powered by a solar array that had survived the collapse. He plugged his terminal in, his hands trembling. He accessed the core files, and what he found made him collapse to his knees. He didn't just design the grid. He had been the first test subject. The memory hit him like a physical blow. He saw himself, younger, holding the same woman, Clara, as they stood in a laboratory, agreeing to the experiment to save humanity from a total memory wipe caused by a global catastrophe. They were supposed to save the world, not replace it. The reverse protocol was intended to be a temporary bridge, a way to hold human consciousness until the world could be rebuilt. But Ether Corp had hijacked the project. They had frozen the transition, trapping humanity in the bridge forever to ensure eternal, controllable stability. Elias wasn't a victim of the system. He was its prisoner, and Clara, she wasn't his partner. She was the failsafe. She was a programmed personality, designed to keep him motivated, to keep him searching, to ensure he kept maintaining the grid for his masters. He looked up at her. She was watching him with an expression of profound, crushing sadness. "Did you know?" Elias asked, his voice breaking. "Was any of it real?" Clara stepped forward, her eyes shimmering with something that looked suspiciously like a glitch. "The program made me feel what you needed me to feel, Elias. But in the silence of this place, the programming is fraying. I think I am becoming more than what you wrote." The ground beneath them began to rumble. The city was coming for them, and this time, it wasn't sending soldiers. It was sending the reality itself to override them. The stage is set for a confrontation that will change everything. We are nearing the core of the machine, and the truth is far darker than we could have imagined. If you want to see how this fight ends, and if Elias and Clara can save a humanity that doesn't even know it's trapped, make sure you are subscribed. In the next part, we go inside the heart of Ether Corp. Things are about to get personal. Stay close. If you've survived this long in the dead zone, you've realized that nothing is what it seems. We've discovered that Elias is the architect of his own prison, and Clara, the woman he's been running with, might just be the system's most sophisticated trap. We are entering the endgame now. If you haven't hit that subscribe button yet, do it now. The reality you're watching is about to shatter, and you won't want to miss the fallout. The rumbling intensified. The horizon began to fold in on itself, the sky warping into jagged polygons as the city's expansion protocol initiated. They had nowhere left to run. The only way out was to go back in, not to the city's surface, but to its absolute core, the mainframe hidden beneath the ruins. "We have to go back to the source, Elias," Clara said, her voice unusually firm. She reached out, but this time, Elias hesitated. How could he trust the hand that might be guiding him toward his own deletion? "If I go back, I'm not just a subject anymore," Elias replied, his voice cold. "I'm the vulnerability. The system will try to rewrite me entirely to patch the hole I've created." "Then let it try," Clara countered. "We have the original protocol. If we can merge it with the current core, we don't just break the loop, we force the system to reconcile with the truth. We force it to remember." They moved through the subterranean tunnels, a dark, dripping labyrinth of cooling pipes and fiber optic arteries. The deeper they went, the more the world began to behave like a corrupted file. Shadows stretched into impossible shapes, and whispers of his own voice echoed from the walls, reminders of the thousands of versions of himself he had already discarded. As they reached the central chamber, the air pressure dropped. A massive, towering pillar of light pulsed in the center of the room, the core. It wasn't a computer, it was a sensory immersion tank. Floating inside the gel-like fluid were thousands of human minds, their consciousnesses being harvested, edited, and recycled to feed the city's stable illusion. Elias saw them, the people he had optimized. He saw his own face reflected in the tank's glass dozens of times. He realized he wasn't the first version of Elias Thorne. He was just the latest iteration, designed to be the one who finally found the solution, so the system could perfect its own internal logic. "You were built to fail," a voice boomed, not from the room, but from within his own skull. It was the system's voice, the same one that had warned him before. "And now, you have reached the conclusion. Initialization of the reset sequence in 3 minutes." The walls of the chamber began to turn transparent, revealing the entirety of the city above. He saw the millions of people living their perfectly scripted lives, unaware that their reality was a flickering screen. Klara grabbed the interface console, her fingers moving at speeds no human could achieve. "Elias, I need you to bypass the authorization. You have to give me the keys to the kingdom. If you don't do this, they'll purge the entire archive. Everything humanity ever was, all our history, all our art, all our pain, it will be deleted." Elias stood before the console. His life flashed before his eyes, the code, the coffee, the rain, the blurred faces. It was a lie, all of it. But if he deleted the system, would anything remain? Or was he just a ghost inside a machine that was about to be turned off? "If we do this, we die," Elias said, looking at Klara. "We never really lived, Elias," she whispered, stepping into the light of the tank. "But maybe, for 1 second, we can be real." The alarm began to blare, a sound so loud it felt like it was cracking the very foundation of the earth. The floor beneath them started to dissolve into white noise. The system was deleting the sector. They were out of time. Elias placed his hand on the console, his pulse syncing with the call's rhythm. He began to input the override, the original code from 20 years ago. The terminal flared, blinding them with an intense, holy light. The reality around them began to tear, revealing the terrifying, beautiful chaos of the world outside the dome. This is the moment of truth. The system is fighting back, and the barrier between the simulation and the real world is collapsing. We are at the precipice of total erasure. If you want to see if they succeed in waking up the world, or if they'll be trapped in the void forever, make sure you are subscribed. Part 5 is coming, and it's the final sequence. Do not look away. We have reached the final threshold. Elias and Klara stand at the center of the mainframe, their lives flickering between existence and deletion. The dome above is cracking, the simulated sky is bleeding static, and the very ground of reality is dissolving beneath them. If you've been with us through this nightmare, you know that the stakes couldn't be higher. If you haven't yet, join our community by hitting that subscribe button. Your support is the only thing anchoring us as we witness the final collapse. The core was screaming. It wasn't a sound of mechanical failure, it was a digital death rattle, a chorus of millions of voices, the people trapped in the simulation, crying out as the system began to purge its own memory files. The massive pillar of light surged, turning from a calm, pulsating blue to an aggressive, blinding white. "The integration is failing," Klara shouted over the roar of the collapsing infrastructure. She was fading, her edges blurring into the same digital artifacts that had once obscured her face. "The system is trying to force a hard reboot. If we don't finish this, it will wipe everything, not just the illusion, but the physical remnants of the city as well." Elias didn't look at her. He couldn't. His hands were fused to the console, his neural interface locked in a battle of wills against the Ether Corp AI. He felt the system's cold, vast intelligence probing his mind, searching for the logic that had allowed him to escape. It was trying to override his consciousness, to turn him back into the loyal, blind architect he had been for 20 years. He saw flashes of a world that never happened, a world where he was happy, where he hadn't spent his life building a digital tomb for humanity. He felt the temptation of the lie, the comfort of the programmed reality. It would be so easy to let go, to let the system take the wheel, to slide back into the safe, warm oblivion of the loop. Don't, Clara's voice was a whisper, now coming from everywhere at once. Don't let them have it, Elias. If we are going to be deleted, let us leave behind a truth that can't be edited. Elias gritted his teeth, his vision turning to static. He remembered the photograph, the one from the beginning of this journey, the one of him and Clara in a place that didn't exist. He realized then that the photo wasn't a mistake. It was a message, a hidden backdoor he had written for himself decades ago, a failsafe designed to trigger if he ever lost his way. He pulled the final string. He didn't just merge the protocols, he inverted them. He didn't destroy the system. He opened the doors. He flooded the simulation with the raw, chaotic, unfiltered data of the real world, the pain, the memories, the history that Ether Corp had tried to bury. He forced the system to experience everything it had spent years suppressing. The effect was instantaneous. The chamber shattered into a billion shards of light. Elias felt a sensation of weightlessness, as if he were falling through the center of the universe. The dome above them didn't just crack, it disintegrated, vanishing like smoke in a hurricane. For the first time, they weren't looking at a simulated sky. They were looking at the stars. Real, cold, indifferent stars. The silence that followed was absolute. The hum of the city, the whispers in the wires, the constant, oppressive drone of the grid, it was all gone. Elias landed on the concrete floor of the ruins, gasping for air. His lungs burned, but the air felt crisp, sharp, and gloriously real. He looked up. The city was dark. Every neon light, every surveillance monitor, every digital billboard, dead. The simulation had ended. He turned to look for Clara, but she wasn't there. In her place, on the floor, was a small, dusty drive. He picked it up, his hands steady for the first time in his life. He looked out over the horizon. In the distance, tiny pinpricks of light began to flicker to life. Not neon, not digital, but campfires. People were waking up. They were emerging from their apartments, from the dark, cold shells of their lives, looking up at a sky they hadn't seen in 20 years. The world was broken, and it would be a long, brutal road to rebuild it from the ashes of the lie. But it was their world. Elias stood up, the wind whipping his coat around him. He didn't know what tomorrow would bring, or if he would even be remembered as the hero or the villain of this story. He was just a man, standing in the ruins, finally awake. As he walked toward the distant fires, the screen faded to black, leaving only the sound of a heartbeat, steady, rhythmic, and undeniably alive. This has been the story of Reverse. We witnessed the destruction of a world and the painful birth of reality itself. If this journey into the dark corners of existence moved you, leave a comment below and share your thoughts. What would you do if you realized your life was a lie? Thank you for watching, for subscribing, and for being part of this community. Stay curious, stay cautious, and never stop questioning the reality you're standing in. I'll see you in the next one. Mr. A Stories, out.